Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is John Harkins. I'm the Events Associate for the French American Chamber of Commerce, New York chapter, and we're happy to welcome you to our webinar today, Talking Meat with Ariane Daguin from D'Artagnan Foods. A quick word about our organization before we begin. The French American Chamber of Commerce's mission is to provide the opportunities, experiences, and understanding that empower successful business relationships between and for members. The FACC New York chapter counts a mosaic of 1,000 members, representing sectors from tech to food, finance, and other professional services. These members have complimentary access to digital events featuring top industry experts and leaders, as well as personalized member-to-member introductions, access to the FACC member directory, and of course, we'll be able to connect with other member attendees of this webinar. Just a couple housekeeping notes. This webinar will last about 45 minutes or so. I encourage everyone, if you have any questions, send them in using the questions section, and we will do our best to answer each one. And of course, this webinar will be recorded, and the slides will be available to all, or the recording will be available to everyone. Just a quick intro about our wonderful speaker and topic. Ariane Daguin is the founder and CEO of D'Artagnan, the renowned gourmet food purveyor, famous for providing humanely raised meats from game and foie gras to organic chicken and prepared charcuterie. Devoted advocates for natural, sustainable, and humane production, Ariane and D'Artagnan have been at the forefront of the organic movement in America, pioneering organic, free-range chicken and humanely raised veal. She continues to find ways to bring innovative projects to the markets, all while staying true to her mission. Today, the food industry as we know it has been upended. Ariane will weigh in on the effects reverberating from field to fork throughout the supply chain, restaurants, and to the end consumer. While taking questions about everything that's going on, Ariane will also be giving us a tour of the company factory to give us all insight in how they are handling the current situation personally. I won't take up everyone's time, so I will let Ariane take from here and we can get started. Ariane?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Everything okay?
Everything's great, thanks.
Okay. So yes, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I figured during that 45 minutes and a little more if there are questions, I'm going to give you a little tour of D'Artagnan so that I can have illustration on things that I'm going to say about the company in general and how we've been pivoting. But I'm also totally open to talk about the meat industry in general, which has a lot of challenges right now, as some of you may know. And I'll take questions about that too, of course. So, are you ready? Let's go start the tour. All right. I just want to introduce some of our pensionnaires. We have Lucy here, who's brooding right now on the eggs. And we have Domi. They both are Toulouse geese, and Domi is very, very aggressive. It doesn't make the sound right now, which is weird, but usually he's very aggressive. And we have Pearl. You see Pearl, who's brooding also in her nest. She's an Araucana. Hello, hello, Domi. How are you? How are you, Domi? Okay, so he's protecting her, and we hope to have babies. I don't know if it's gonna happen or not, but we sure hope it's gonna work out. Basically, Rob, our CFO, say hi.
Hello.
French American Chamber of Commerce.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Okay, so I'm not going to go further than that in the offices because it's not fun, it's just offices. But it's just to show you that as an essential business, we have a lot of people still here. We do have plenty, all the salespeople and administrative at home, but there are a lot of people still here at Union, which is one of our 5 distribution centers. Here is our dining room. This is our dining room with the kitchen over there. So usually during lunchtime it's pretty full, but now we're being very careful about distanciation, and we're entering the warehouse. So what I'm doing right now, we're not really supposed to do, which is to go from the front office to the back office, to the back warehouse. The warehouse, as I was saying, is one of 5 distribution centers. We're here in Union, New Jersey. The other ones are in Atlanta, Houston, Chicago, and Denver. And here we have an enormous amount of boxes, insulated boxes with ecological, sustainable material inside to ship to e-commerce, which is our #1 business today, because on March 14, we lost 75% of our business, which was the restaurants. The restaurants closed on March 14, that weekend. And so since then, we've been pedaling maximum to augment retail, the retail sales, and e-commerce. And so while there are 5 distribution centers, this one here is more geared for e-commerce, though we do ship to the other from the other centers too, just to make economies on the freight. So we're gonna get give me a second. Hello, how are you? Okay. This is a logistic. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Hi. Hello. So this is the one office that is open 24/7. That's from that office that the drivers are dispatched. And today the drivers don't have much deliveries in restaurants anymore. But we opened a home delivery system with our own trucks instead of just with FedEx or third party logistic transport. So just to keep busy, just to keep the drivers busy and the trucks on the road, since we have those fixed expenses anyway. And since we decided from the beginning, we decided that we didn't want anybody to be laid off. So I'm sorry, I'm just disinfecting my hands. And here we are in the warehouse. Hello guys, hello. Can you hear
Ariane,
me?
not too well. Would you mind just giving us a quick look?
-32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 centigrade. This is a receiving area. This is Nestor, who just came back to work. Hi, how are you? Let me know anything you want, anything you need. All right. So let's get out of here because you cannot hear me, right?
No, we can't see you.
Some products, or?
If we can, but we would like to be able to hear you. And I have a bunch of. I can hear you, but I have questions. I think it'd be great if we could hear you better.
Okay. All right. So we good now?
We are good. I do have
Can
just
you
a
hear
quick
me now?
question. I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
Ariane, how are you shipping to the rest of the US? Is it through entirely on your own force?
So we have what we call our line hauls, which are those huge trucks that you see on the road, refrigerated trucks. Those go from our distribution centers. So mostly from here to Chicago, then Chicago to Texas, and here to Atlanta, and then Texas to Colorado. But we try to buy from slaughterhouses that are wherever the closest distribution center is where we get the meat from that slaughterhouse, and then it's dispatched to the other distribution centers with our own trucks. Then we have a fleet of 70 trucks between the 5 distribution centers, and those were dedicated to distribute to all the restaurants 5 hours away maximum around those hubs. And those are the ones that are dedicated today, as I was saying, to the home delivery. So here we are making the boxes. This is how we assemble the boxes, and just to show you, to give you an idea of how it works. So those are the cardboard boxes that have to be assembled, and these are the inserts that are made of corn and that are dissolvable. So when you receive a box from us, you can recycle the cardboard, and then the insert inside, that stuff right there, you can just put under water and it dissolves. So we're going to go back to my office so I can sit down and talk about the meat industry a little bit. Meanwhile, any questions? Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'd like to know if the shortage that we are seeing in the US, is this something that's happening in the rest of the world?
The shortages in meat?
Yes.
Yeah. No, what's happening in the US and in the rest of the world is that there has been sporadic closing of slaughterhouses, and mostly the huge ones, the ones that actually deal with factory farming and which deals with huge amounts of meat. Those, because of the proximity of the workers, there are minimum 1,000 workers in there, and they work very close to each other. Every one of them does one thing, one cut or one placing of the meat or one hanging. And so, let's say hi to back to Domi. Yep. Okay. Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, okay, all right. So because of that, there has been a lot of cases of coronavirus because everybody was contagious, and so one case brought to a lot of cases very quickly, and so that brought a lot of really sad happenings in those slaughterhouses, and subsequently closing them temporarily, while because they didn't have enough workers, because workers were either in quarantine or were sick, and that's what was happening. So you would think, okay, so because of that, then if they close, and those were geared to have thousands and thousands of pounds of pork or beef coming out of their places every day, we're going to be short. Well, not necessarily. First, those big guys, the 5 big guys, they want us to believe we're going to be short because it's a way to bring up the commodity prices. Second, there are a lot of meats that were dedicated to restaurants that are closed today. And so those meats have to be redirected, retransformed, or recut, or repackaged for retail and consumers, which are much smaller packages, etc. And so, and there is a lack of volume from the restaurants. And I'm not talking just my restaurants, I'm talking about the commodity kind of meat restaurants. So, you know, the McDonald's, all those guys. And so because of that, there might not be that big of a shortage. Second thing, we do not export anymore right now. Right now, all the frontiers have been stopped. So all the meats that was destined to export are staying in freezing inventory right now, huge warehouses, freezers. And so because of those reasons and the fact that before the virus, there was a glut, especially in pork, because we had stopped exporting to China. I don't know if you remember, but we were at kind of a mini war with China with a tariff, and we didn't want to buy their soy anymore, so they decided not to buy our pork anymore, or to buy it, but to put such a tariff on it that it made it impossible and or very difficult. And the result of that is that China started to buy much more from Russia and Brazil, or South America in general, than from the United States. All that to say that supposedly there is a shortage, that there is indeed a short-time shortage where the circuit and the logistics don't follow, you know, the food chain breaks, but there is no true shortage. There are huge inventories in the back of that. Besides that, and what is dramatic for the farmers, and I'm not talking so much for the kind of farmers that we are using at D'Artagnan, who are only small, sustainable farmers who do things the right way, following our instructions, no hormones, no antibiotics, ranch without feedlot, feeding the animals on the prairie directly. So those guys, those small guys, they are okay when they are raising animals that are very prone to retail and e-commerce. And so namely chicken, beef, lamb, pork, okay? But the small guys who've been raising for us quail and rabbit and squab and pheasant and specialty ducks, those guys are suffering a lot, because it was mostly the restaurants who were buying that kind of a product. And people, as much as they are ready to eat that quail dish in a restaurant environment, they are not quite ready, even though they are cooking much more at home, they are not quite ready to actually venture cooking that kind of game bird or game meat at home. So those guys are suffering. But on the commodity side, when there are farmers, because most of the time those are not farms, those are just factories that belong to one of the big fives, you know, the JBS, Tyson, Cargill, Hormel. Those guys right now have a huge amount of meat on the hoof, live animals, that were ready to go to the slaughterhouse, but can't, because the slaughterhouse is momentarily closed. And that is bringing a huge crisis in America, what to do with those animals. And to the point where there is right now a discussion in Congress to see how we can euthanize those animals. It's a huge, huge waste of resources and money, and it's terrible. And this is basically due to the way we've been, since World War II, we've been gearing up our meat consumption. I do believe that we eat too much meat, but too much of the bad meat, and that we should rethink a little bit our circuits and really favor and support the small farmers. Of course, I'm talking about my own guys, but in general, you know, and really take a hard look at how we've been raising animals in a factory farm environment, and limit that, because besides polluting, besides not paying the right price for it, you know, with all those subsidies because of the corn subsidies. Besides polluting our own bodies and being not being good for the health, this is a perpetual. There is right now in the system, there is no end to it. It is not, when you really think about it, it is not normal today to be able to go in a burger place and to buy a burger for $1, even $1.50. It's not normal. Once you take out the price of the bun, of the lettuce, of the tomato, what was that meat that they put in there to be able to command that $1.50? Think about it a little bit. It's not, you know, this is not right. This is not right. So basically, we're eating crap and we're paying for it.
Sure. Well, if we're looking at things, just to switch gears to the next question, a little bit more intimately, from a consumer perspective, what have you seen as the main concerns from buying meat at home on the consumer side, or buying meat to their home, I should say?
The main concern as a consumer?
Correct.
Well, there is always that element of panic. The same element that made us buy 6 months worth of toilet paper at the beginning of the crisis is the same thing here. So people tend to want to fill their freezer, and then when they hear shortage or maybe shortage, then they all go to the butcher department in their supermarket and they buy everything inside. And so if there wasn't a shortage, now there is, you know, momentarily, but now there is because everybody is filling their freezer. Then again, the freezer has there is a finite dimension to the freezer, you know, so you can't buy much more than what you can eat on a regular basis. So that should take care of itself eventually. And if I as a consumer myself, as a shopper myself, I wouldn't be worried about finding supply for meat. That wouldn't be one of my worries at all.
Have a bit more of a technical question. How is your credit department dealing with your accounts receivables? Are you allowed to contact them and request payment?
Am I allowed? Are we allowed? We're allowed, but nobody's on the other side of the line. That's a problem. Perfectly allowed. There is just nobody there. A very big blank on the other side of the line. We applied for PPP, and because right from the start, even before PPP existed, we decided not to lay off anybody. So we're in a good position there, and so that has been that loan has been allowed to has been allowing us to have the cash flow needed, even though all those restaurants that are closed now, we're buying meat, you know, typically a restaurant will pay their bill between 30 and 60 days, let's say an average of 45 days. So all the way up to 45 days before the closing, all that money we haven't seen yet. And since the closing of the restaurants, of course, there is no receivable problems there. But those 45 days are huge. It's a huge amount. But again, the PPP compensated for that in part. So, I mean, we can't continue too much longer like that. It says that, I mean, some states have reopened. In New York City, maybe end of June. So we're getting there, or mid-June. We're getting there eventually. There are several concerns, however. And the first concern is that tourists are not going to be around this year. The second concern is that we don't know the rules yet, but there's going to be rules about not putting as many people in the restaurants as the legal occupancy used to be. And there's going to be more things to do, costly things to do, you know, no contact payment, having a mask, taking temperature maybe of the people coming in. I mean, we don't know yet, but that plus probably also the fact that people are not going to want to go back to restaurants quite yet, I don't think, and are going to be ready to, on the takeout side, to support their local restaurants, but maybe not to get in yet. So a lot of chefs, friends who have been talking about are, one, questioning, unless they are in very summer popular areas like the Hamptons, you know, the end of London, they are wondering if they shouldn't wait until September before they reopen anyway. That's the first thing. The second thing is some of them even are asking if they shouldn't wait until there is a vaccine before they reopen, because they are afraid that nobody's going to get in the restaurants anyway. And the third part is trying to make it work with the takeout. And I don't think people and media in general realize how different the takeout revenues are from the take-in. And somebody who's set up an entity, a restaurant who's set up with the tablecloth and the wine cellar and the waiters and the kitchen, the size it is to do elaborate dishes in a restaurant setting, how costly it is in that environment to do takeout profitably. And the last thing is that when there are limitations to takeout. I mean, how is it going to keep warm? Is it going to be as good as, you know, there are some things that work, pizza. But there are some things that are going to be very difficult to translate into a good takeout dish. All these are very big challenges for restaurants, and chefs are really, first of all, they are depressed, and for good reasons. But the second, they are asking themselves a lot of questions, and they think the paysage, the landscape is going to tremendously change, but we don't know exactly how yet, and that is very, very worrisome. There was no crisis. D'Artagnan is 35 years old. There has been no crisis similar to this one ever. We've been through big crises, but not like that. Not when we didn't know when it was going to end and how to reinvent yourself. We pivoted once already. Now we're going to need to pivot a second time, but to what? We don't know quite yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned the shift to helping small farms. So we have a couple questions, but I'd like to roll them into maybe just two. The first one being, does our country have the infrastructure set up to support the small farms? And how can we at home as individuals help the small farms without overworking them, without pushing them to the limit?
So the second question, how can we help them? That's what we've been doing at D'Artagnan since 35 years. And education is the key. You have to be curious and you have to want to know where your food comes from, and not just meat, but vegetables, but you know how it was raised. Were there any medication involved or not? Were they free roaming or not? Because at the end of the day, it's better tasting when the animals have been free of stress. I keep saying, I say all the time, a happy chicken is a tasty chicken. And it's true, a happy chicken is a tasty chicken. So even if you're going to pay a little more money, it's important to identify small farmers and to support them, to go to your farmers market or to buy from people like D'Artagnan, who really specialize in selecting small farmers and developing them. We have a system where we never ask a farmer for more than what the superficie of the farm can support in a sustainable free-range way. So, you know, we've been at that for 35 years. We know what we're doing. The only thing we don't know how to do right now is our forecast, which is the first time ever, but we kind of know what we're doing. The farmers who need our support, we have started a fund. It's called the All for One Farmers Fund, you know, D'Artagnan, the Musketeer, all for one, one for all. So we started that fund for specifically the small farmers who are raising animals, who are not very much in demand right now. And this we did in conjunction with Farm Aid. So if you go to the D'Artagnan website and you buy something from D'Artagnan, there is a place where you can actually put $5, $10 in your order just for that fund. If you don't want to buy from D'Artagnan at this time, then go directly to Farm Aid and go to the All for One Farmers Fund and put your money there. But really, the biggest thing you can do for farmers is to be educated, to look at who really is a small, sustainable, independent farmer, and
Sure.
buy from true farmers, not from factory.
Sure, sure. And just very quickly, do you think that we have the infrastructure as a nation to help them once this current crisis is over?
We don't have the slaughterhouses anymore. We have only huge slaughterhouses, processing places. Huge. When I say huge, it's between 1,000 and 2,000 employees. And of course, that brought down the price of the processing per pound tremendously. You know, to have those huge places that went through tons and tons of animals per day, and that are still doing that today. But there is a price to that. And so even people like me have a hard time at D'Artagnan. You know, for example, in Missouri, we have a group of 17 ranchers doing our Berkshire pork. And it's very difficult to find that. That's the equivalent of 300 to 350 whole hogs a week, okay? So finding the trucking company to go from one to the other to pick up the live animals or live hogs, that's not a problem. Finding a processor who's ready to do 300 to 350 hogs a week for us, when they are doing 350 hogs an hour right now, is very difficult. And those big guys, they don't like our Berkshire pork. Our pigs are older because it's a heritage breed, so they mature more slowly. They are bigger, they are stockier, they are squarer, so you have to change the space between the hooks on top. I mean, you have to stop 1,000 employees to change some stuff in the chain before processing our kind of animals. And so we're not welcome in the big guys, and the smaller guys are closing one after the other because the big guys are offering such a low price per pound that they are killing the small processors. And that's the stuff so we're working on changing that. We're talking with Cornell University a lot. We're talking with Farms Bureau from the USDA in several states to try to reinstate human-sized processors who would be ready to take on the independent farmers' goods instead of just going through that commodity factory farming.
Understood. Just shifting back to the consumer aspect of things, do you see any change in the consumer expectation dealing with food and particular meat safety and traceability?
I wish, again, it's all about education. And I wish that people were more demanding than the consumer entities would be more demanding on right now, there are a lot of things and marketing that's muddying the water. What is really good? What is just somebody big making believe they are small and virtuous? It's all over the place today. And so really, on one side, the solution is education, education, education of the consumer, because there is everything to gain taste-wise, health-wise, and planet-wise to go in a smaller, more sustainable way. But also, it will have to be coming from the government. And that's the difficulty with the strength of the lobby right now. That's going to be the big difficulty. Though this crisis has taught us a lesson, I hope.
If you're able to, would you be able to tell us how the current situation has affected your business model in the long run and where you see it changing to?
Well, as I said previously, March 14, we lost 75% of our revenues. Today, we're at -10. So we made huge headways in compensating for the loss of revenues. It's going to be super complicated now, and we're going to have to relook at it and reinvent and repivot once more now because of what I was saying previously, because restaurants are reopening, but there's going to be a mixture of not having people in the restaurants or having half the people that used to be, and this new avenue, which is called takeout, and which is very puzzling to everybody right now. You know, what is going to be, besides pizza, what is going to be consumed in those, and I'm being facetious when I say pizza, but you know, things that are very easy to keep hot and to reheat, starches, and things that are not expensive either. So for us, it's a big question right now, and this is what we're really looking at right now. What is going to be the pace of the reopening of the restaurants? What is going to be the pace of the e-commerce? Because as much as we went up to 500%. I mean, our e-commerce used to be 10% of our business. It cannot stay that way. You know, as the restaurants are going to reopen, as takeout is going to take over, the e-commerce is going to go down a little bit, I would assume. And so it's really important, up to us today to take a look at how those numbers are going to shift again, and how we're going to have to reshift again the labor and the energy and the finances and the investments from one department to the other. Basically, there are 3 departments: retail, e-commerce, and restaurants. And so retail went up, very good. E-commerce went up, very good. Restaurant went down to the ground. Now restaurants are going to go back up a little bit. But those other 2, something is going to give. You know, you eat twice a day, not 5 times a day. So we're going to have to look at this very, very carefully, and to be super flexible and adaptable on the fly like that.
Well, I think we're coming close to our time together, so I'd like to just ask one more question, and maybe on a positive note. What is the good thing in the industry that will come out of the crisis that you think will, take hold and stay?
Well, it's been a line in our discussion here, but I really think it's it's the fact that people are cooking more at home. I hope that's going to stay. I hope that will bring that education I was talking about, because once you cook a bad chicken next to a good chicken and you compare them, then you understand, and those are things that chefs from restaurants knew, and always knew, because they went to school for it. or they experienced it firsthand. Consumers didn't. And with that crisis, I think a lot of people are more conscious of that because they learn how to cook at home. And I really hope that this cooking at home is going to stay, and not only stay, but now that confinement is getting a little loose and eventually is going to disappear, I hope that people will take this opportunity to be convivial and to invite other people in their home and to cook, not just for their family, but for friends, and to have a new way of life, which was a life that Europeans, French in particular, had not too long ago, you know, social life around the table.
Well, I think we all agree that we should be cooking together next webinar. But Ariane, I want to take the time to thank you so much for giving us not only a look into your factory and to the office as an essential business, but also giving us some pretty in-depth insight into the meat industry and how food is going to look. So from all of us at the FACC and the attendees, thank you so much for taking the time. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience at the beginning when
of course.
it worked out.
Of course, no, it's not a problem at all. I'm glad it all worked out in the end. To the attendees, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all for the patience in the beginning, but we have a great calendar of webinars coming up, so I anticipate seeing you all there. And thank you again for all the questions. I'm sure Ariane could agree these questions are pretty intense, and Ariane definitely answered every single one of them. So Ariane, thank you once more, and I know we will speak soon and look to cook together on our next webinar.
All right, see you soon.